Right, morning everyone. Welcome to this second talk about the use of technology in learning. This paper was again focusing on the different aspects of the use of technology in enhancing student learning. As the title suggests, it's the role of technology in student learning and engagement at the case of the webinar. And this again on the back of not only the pandemic, but as a whole, looking at the concepts of online learning, a bit of context, where a lot of our students, especially on the apprenticeship program, had that model of face-to-face and then online webinar delivery. So this project was on the back of that to see the impact on student learning and engagement. So the topic itself, it's an exploratory study which looked into the use of webinars and how they impact student learning and engagement. The main focus was webinars purely, which were delivered through Blackboard Collaborate. The research followed a constructivist approach as we utilized other people's opinions to form an understanding of the research topic, which in this case was looking at student learning and engagement through the webinar. The objective of the research was threefold. Firstly, to identify the role of technology in student learning and engagement as a whole, what types of technologies exist, and obviously, like I said, pandemics aren't the only reason people shift to use technology in online learning. They have existed earlier. There are softwares out there which are used for conducting business meeting and all those sort of things. The second objective was to develop an understanding of the use of webinars as a tool. So technology as a whole, and then drilling down a bit to look at technology from the perspective of webinars as a tool. And then finally, understanding and analyzing the impact of webinar use on student learning and engagement. So what sort of impact does webinars have in terms of student learning and engagement? So recommendations would be given to practitioners like myself to help them enhance the student learning and engagement through the use of webinars, and also identifying potentially the right virtual platforms for use. As you know, there are a number of ones out there. So we've got Blackboard Collaborate, we've got Teams, we've got Zoom, and I'm sure there are many others out there which can be used as well for this purpose. So the methods that we used, it was more of a case study approach, utilizing qualitative methods to collect data. The use of questionnaires was made as they were easy to administer given the time frame and the nature of the topic at hand. The survey was distributed to about 90 business school students who have experienced both face-to-face sessions and webinars. So the same teacher as myself, I was the one who was doing the research. I had taught them face-to-face sessions, and I had also taught them webinars, so I could easily compare the experiences that they had. The data analysis was using the survey responses to develop an understanding of the emerging themes. So we used Qualtrics to set up the survey, send it out to students, and get feedback from them on that. So the findings, which mainly came out, firstly, in terms of demographics, majority of the respondents were between the age of 21 to 35, so more or less your mature students. The attendance, majority of the students, so there are different variables which were coming out on the back of the questions that were set. So one was demographic, the other was attendance, and then the access of webinars, the right support, usefulness, and different aspects. Obviously, these factors, these themes were based more of an inductive, deductive approach, where we looked at some of the aspects coming out from the literature, and then some coming out from the surveys that were conducted. Majority of students attended between 1 to 3 webinars in a 12, say 10 to 12 webinar course, which was quite low given the fact that the modules they took had an average of 8 webinars each. This element links to student engagement. So obviously attendance and engagement are interlinked. If you join a live webinar, the impact is completely different. The learning is different versus if you catch a recording, because in a recording you can't really ask questions. And most of the cases, I've never had anyone contact me post watching a recording. I don't understand this. Can you explain? So that's the downside of it. Accessing webinars, majority of the students did not face any issues in terms of technicality, in terms of accessing Blackboard or using the software. Majority of the students said that they were able to get the right support, whether that was from me as a lecturer or from the TEL team or from other technology related teams which are there at the university and IT support, etc. Usefulness of webinars in delivering course content. 56% of the respondents agreed that yes, this notion is correct, and 6% strongly agreed to this notion, saying that yes, webinars delivering online content was very useful. This is positive feedback for the use of webinars in course delivery. Obviously, when I was doing the research, I was a bit oblivious, not researcher bias, but given that once you get a lot of times when you get feedback on your modules and others, there will be one or two outliers who would always say, I prefer face-to-face, or I wish it was face-to-face, which obviously makes sense. We do prefer face-to-face ourselves as well as lecturers, because there's more engagement, there's more leeway to do things. The other themes that were coming out: webinars developing subject skills. 39% agreed, and 6% strongly agreed with this notion that yes, webinars do help develop subject skills, as in subject skills, which means specific to that module or specific to that learning. Again, positive impact of webinars to improve subject skills. 28% agreed, while 32% disagreed with this notion that student found webinars engaging. Again, this impacts the overall working environment, because the reason when we look at webinars engagement varies from cohort to cohort. With our mature students who are used to, say, online meetings, online delivery, because they do one face-to-face or two face-to-face full days, and then they go away and they have 10 webinars. For them, webinars are fine. They like it. But those students who've had a flavor of full-on, full-term face-to-face teachings, you move them to the webinar, they're not too happy. And that's why you could see a difference coming in from the responses there. Contribution by the student, sorry, majority disagreed with the notion and believed they would contribute more to a face-to-face session rather than a webinar, which is true. I mean, you would have noticed a lot of times when you go on online meetings, a lot of people don't have their cameras on. You would have to encourage them to put it on. A lot of people would have their mics mute, and they would not contribute as much. They might be more comfortable contributing via text in the chat box rather than speaking. So it gives you that sort of filter where if you don't want to speak, you don't have to speak. But in a class setting, it's not that easy to get away with it, because there might be someone who's teaching who might give you a cold call, ask you a question, ask you to come and explain something, do a bit of group work. Because I do remember we did, because of the pandemic, we were doing tutorials on on Blackboard Collaborate, where we would break them up into different groups. And when you entered that group, that discussion group, as soon as you entered, people spoke. Otherwise, no one was speaking anything. They were just chatting away in the chat box rather than speaking. So, it's difficult to create that environment in a virtual setting. Preparation aspect of the webinar, disagreed with the notion and felt that they are less likely to prepare for a webinar than a face-to-face session. And the reasons, if you dig deep into the comments and the feedback that people said on the back of that comment, was basically because you can get away with it in a webinar. You can just join online unless someone probes you. So a practice which I've started to do in my webinars is basically, after about every 5-10 minutes, I might ask a question, do a poll to see response and engagement. Otherwise, you don't really know if people have joined online and in the background they're watching Netflix or something else. It happens. I mean, a lot of things happen in this day and age, but you don't know if people turn their cameras off, and you don't really know whether they are engaged completely or not. Implications: a holistic approach is needed to understand the nature and the use of technology to enhance the learning and engagement of students. There's no one-size-fits-all model. You need to tweak your delivery and the way you deliver online for different types of cohorts and types of students. The results of the survey have been analysed and show an overall positive impact of webinars for students' learning and engagement, which is good. Given the circumstances around the world with COVID and the use of blended learning, there is still a lot of opportunity to improve on webinar delivery, which I'm sure all of you who are learning technologists and other teams would agree to that. There's a lot of potential out there, and we can do a lot of things potentially. Despite the growing concern with the youth being overwhelmed with technology having a negative impact on mental health, which is a big issue, obviously, universities who are not early adopters of technology in their teaching and learning seem to be at a loss, which is quite true. I mean, we as staffs, I think, are fortunate enough that we've got the right teams in place, we've got the right support. But I know a lot of people who are in different universities, and they don't necessarily have that level of support and engagement or the use of technology as we do. I mean, Catalyst is a perfect example of upgrading ourselves completely with the new type of technology, and obviously being able to use that in different ways. So it's a more informed approach needs to be taken with framing policies for technology in the HE sector involving all stakeholders. So academics, technologists, companies who are selling this technology, all of them need to be on the same page so they're able to um, bring everything together and actually benefit from the whole technology in the best possible manner. So looking at the contribution and recommendations, there is a need to have the right support mechanisms from the university in place for the webinar delivery on different platforms to be successful. That's generic. So whether it's Teams, Zoom, or any others, there needs to be an approach which everyone understands. Availability of timely recordings is essential as it benefits the students and gives flexibility to students with varying learning needs. This is very important. I know sometimes lecturers might lapse a bit. They've recorded it, they haven't shared it, but obviously sometimes students are waiting for that recording to get access to benefit from. So all those factors need to be looked at. The student and teacher both need to be trained to fully utilize the benefits from webinars on different platforms. Again, we assume at times it's just teacher who needs the training, but obviously students need to know the platform. A lot of times in our first few sessions, we are actually explaining to the students what to do and how to do it. Most of the times, obviously in the induction programs and others, we do give them insights on what to do and how to do it, but you know, a lot of people don't turn up, may not utilize it to the best possible opportunity. Technical issues need to be ironed out as soon as possible to ensure consistency in delivery of webinars on different platforms. I would agree to that completely. I've had a chance to attend a few online training sessions, and there's always a person on hand in those sessions who's a technology person who can sort out issues with sound and other things. And I think that is something that we can do. Maybe have a virtual person present, could be on Teams whenever we're delivering if we're stuck, rather than us panicking, we can connect with them straight away, like something like 3800 but virtual, something that we can look at. There needs to be a mindset of independent learning, which needs to be developed for students to benefit from technology. I think this is very important. I mean, just having this approach and assumption that because we've given them the best laptop, the technology, the software, it's going to work. There needs to be a culture change, a mindset change where you become an independent learner yourself. So blended learning does not work where we just go online and everything is going to be downloaded in a student's perspective. It's more about the change in mindset and how you manage the use of the technology you have. So that's about it from my side. Slightly snapshot for this one because this is my own research. I was the main author for this one, along with Kat as the co-author. So thank you very much to everyone who joined, especially our learning technologists who are there as my audience. But thank you for giving me the opportunity. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ali, for your second presentation of the day. I must concur with you that students actually join webinars and won't put the hand up and actually speak, but they will text. And what I found was that if you put students into groups, into breakout groups, they would turn on their cameras and turn on their mics, and they'd be quite happy to have a conversation with their peers. And then the spokesperson for that group would then feed back in the main room. Yes, it sometimes feels as though you're talking into a void. So you have to have lots of different activities, Padlet walls, Socrative, those kind of
Yeah.
tools, which could actually help.